Hello everyone. So, Generation 5 has really been taking over everything this week. I really want to talk about it though, because as you can clearly see, it is made in CG. It is a 3D animated movie, in the style of many other 3D animated movies you've seen in the past at this point. You know, it's all ray traced, 3D models are pretty high fidelity, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's a lot that I would say that I would be familiar with in terms of making those kind of things. Of course, I'm not professional at this point, but I know a lot about this subject. And I also happen to be the person that's been making a lot of the Blender MLP animations and models and stuff. So this is going to be a very interesting topic for me to talk about, I think. And right off the bat, I will say that I am very happy with what we have. It is a lot better than I could have hoped, honestly. Of course, it doesn't mean I don't have nitpicks. There are some things I probably would have done differently. But in the end, I'm so fairly happy with what we have. And it's honestly a treat to see these characters officially being represented well in 3D, as that's never really been a thing before. Anytime you've ever seen any characters from MLP in the past in 3D, especially in like Hello Piggy Pie, those shorts, it's always been very rough around the edges. But clearly the people behind this movie know what they're doing, which is a good sign. I don't think I'll be commenting too much on what like the synopsis of the film is going to be. Like, that's already been announced, but I'm not going to talk about it too much today because it's only a synopsis, and what matters to me is how the storyline and plot is executed more so than what the premise is. Because you, in my opinion, you can make any premise work as long as you execute it well. And I have no idea how it's going to be executed, so who am I to judge? It's only a premise. If you want to find out what the premise is, you could probably Google it. You'll find it somewhere. But yeah, I guess today I just want to talk about what we're looking at here. Just want to give some thoughts on what I think about some parts of the designs, some things about how the visuals look, in terms of the shading and all that kind of stuff. Also the animation too. There's a brief preview animation that was revealed earlier as well, that I'll show and make some comments on, because I have some things to say about that as well. Alright, the first thing I want to open with is the nitpick that I have. I might as well start with this first, because it's the only thing I really have to say that's negative. Is perhaps the eyes. They're not a huge problem to me. It's just one aspect of it that I probably would have done a bit differently. I think the eyes are a little too far apart. The thing that kind of throws me off with the face is mainly the gap between the eyes and where you can see the width of the ridge between the eyes being extremely wide. It's the only thing that's really majorly throwing me off, especially when I first saw this render. This is the first render we got to see that was first revealed a couple days ago. There's a few ways you can address this, but I've seen a lot of corrections on Twitter and stuff that overcorrect it. Like they scale the eyes up to be extremely large, and I don't think that's the right direction for this art style. Those overcorrections that I've seen online don't really take into account the art style that this is going for. It makes it look too different, and it just makes it look strange. And you also have to keep in mind that this art style is also meant to accommodate the 3D that's being used here. You can't just scale up the eyes in Photoshop and expect that to translate into a 3D model the way you would expect it to. Unless you cheat it extremely, which I don't think this style is really going for. I don't think there's a lot of cheating going on with forced perspective or whatever. My models do that, but not this. I don't think this really does that, if at all. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind. The overcorrections where you see the eyes being that big, I don't like that. It doesn't keep the art style that they're going for in mind. The corrections I'd want to do is something that would keep the integrity of the art style, not veer away from it, you know? But yeah, it is a minor thing at the end of the day, and it's honestly something I can probably just get used to, you know? I think it's really important to have a good mindset when it comes to accepting something new and different, is to not judge things too harshly just based on your own first impressions, because I feel like that can lead to people just dismissing something just because it just looks different, not because it looks bad. I would urge everyone that's watching to give this style a fair chance. I think there's a lot of potential here. Just try not to dismiss it because it's different. And you might even be doing that and not realize it, just because you don't have the right mindset. I think it's important to give something a fair chance. And if you give this a fair chance and you're still not really like into the style, I think that's fair enough. I just think it's important to give things a fair chance, because for me, my history with FIM Gen 4, if I never gave that show a fair chance because of my first impressions of it being a show for little girls, why would I want to watch that, right? I wouldn't have been a fan of the show. It's important to have an open mind, I think, especially given the type of show this is, or I guess a type of movie this is at this point. This is going to be a very interesting way to debut this generation, by the way. Having a full-length CG film to open it up. It's essentially an hour-and-a-half long premiere, pretty much. It's going to be very interesting. But anyway, let's move on. So that was my minor nitpick out of the way. I might as well get that out of the way first, right? On to the positives. I want to just say that I am extremely jealous with how they managed to pull off the visuals in terms of the rendering, the shading, the material work, the hair particles. Everything related to that is phenomenal here. It's very, very good. Especially, we're going off based off just like 2 screenshots, by the way. We don't know if the entire film is going to have problems in terms of that kind of stuff, but based on the 2 screenshots we have, it looks very, very solid in terms of that aspect. I'm not a lighting expert myself, so I don't think I have much to say other than it just looks really, really nice. It's very, very solid lighting. We have outdoor lighting bleeding in to give some rim lighting to the models, I imagine. But yeah, I can't make too many comments on it. It's not my expertise. I specialize in other aspects of 3D. So right now, I want to talk about my favorite aspect of these models, and that's the hair. Not just the manes, but also the coats as well. You can see the coats are actually covered with actual fur. It's not just a plain blob mesh. It's actual fur. And just seeing how they look is really making me wish I was able to figure out a way to get fur or hair particles to work in general for my models in Blender. I might try to give that a shot again soon. Because there's a lot of upsides to using hair particles. That isn't just the aesthetics. The aesthetics are great. But maybe I'll get into that another day. Or get into the details of that, of how I would try to do that. So I might as well, before I get too deep into that, I might as well introduce the characters in case you don't know. But the 2 main characters here, there's probably going to be about 5 main characters, I think. It's all based on leaks and speculative things, but 5 or 6 characters that are going to be in the main cast. But these are 2 of them here. We have Sunny. That's just part of her name. Her full name is Sunny Star Scout. And then we have Izzy. Her full name being Izzy Moonbow. Yeah, Moonbow. So if you take a closer look at Izzy, I would be lying if I didn't say that Izzy is definitely my favorite character in terms of looks right now that we've seen so far from these renders. I love how the main looks. It looks great. It makes me jealous, honestly. Again, it's why I want to try to figure out a way to get hair to work for my models, because it could look as good as this, but the method that I use can't rival this, honestly, especially for hair that's like this poofy and curly and all that. That's extremely hard to do with my method. For those that are unaware, I might as well show this. If we take a look at my models, right here, I have Colorature loaded up right now. You can see that the hair is loaded up in its like somewhat final looking form in real-time rendering mode. It looks fairly convincing, right? You can see the individual strands and you can see them tapering away and all that, but it's all fake. It's an illusion. I don't use hair particle systems at all, which is why I'm saying I wish I was able to do it, because I'm not doing it at all. If we take a look at the inside of this hair mesh here, you can see that these are split up in layers. And you can see it more obviously if you take a look inside. You can see the rings that make up the layers of the hair. It does a decent job of creating the illusion of actual hair being grown there. And they're honestly a lot easier to work with in animation. However, there are very, very huge limitations with using meshes for hair. A lot of it I probably won't get too into, but one of the main things that may even surprise some people is that this method of doing hair like this is extremely taxing. It is very, very difficult to render quickly because of a quirk with ray tracing, and I guess 3D rendering in general. It's not just ray tracing, but whenever you have transparency in a mesh, you have to cast 2 rays from the camera. If it was not transparent, it would just be 1 ray, and that 1 ray can then just bounce off. However, when you have transparency involved, you have to do the first part, which is, just do the ray, then do the bounce lighting, and then you have to recast it again when it goes through it. And even if it's 100% transparent, this calculation still has to be taken into account. Yeah, anyway. Generally, that's not too bad to deal with until you stack a bunch of transparent meshes on top of each other, especially in close proximity, like what I'm doing here. I believe there are about 8 layers of meshes here. And that's a lot. And it's not easy to render. It is very taxing. So it may surprise some of you that using actual hair particle systems is actually quicker to render. I've done tests on this multiple times before, and yes, it is much quicker. However, it does have another downside when you use actual hair particle systems. Memory usage when you render is a lot higher because you have to keep track of each individual strand of hair. But since the hair doesn't have a bunch of transparency stacked on top of each other like all this mesh here does, it is nowhere near as taxing. That is how severe stacking transparency is when it comes to render times. It is extremely taxing. So that's the main gist of what I'm dealing with my models. And clearly, this is not using my method, and why would they? They are a professional studio full of professionals that probably have experience doing this in the first place. So I suppose I'm not surprised that they are actually using hair particle systems. It just makes me jealous. I wish I could do this, and it makes me want to look into it again. And I say again because I have looked into it before. I've tried using hair with my models. I've kept running into many technical hurdles. I feel like I am smarter now than I was back then. I might be able to overcome some of that, which is why I want to try it again eventually. I have some other things I want to say about the hair in the animation itself once we get to that. Also, for the first time ever, ponies are going to have actual permanent eyebrows. As you can see, eyebrows. They are a permanent facial feature now. Not to say they didn't have them before for like special characters in like FIM. There are plenty of characters in Friendship is Magic that had eyebrows that were permanent. But they were usually exceptions to the rule, not the default. But now that has changed. I don't mind them too much. I'm mostly indifferent. I don't mind either way. I can see why they would want to do that for 3D, because it's kind of hard to convey emotion if you don't have very visible brows in 3D. And it's something I had to deal with myself. I had to choose whether or not to have eyebrows visible at all times or not, or just find a way to make them toggleable. I've been back and forth on that a lot over the years. But ultimately, for my models, I've chosen that I think I can make it work if I can make them toggleable. Because, yeah, my models do have eyebrows. Just, I can hide them if I wanted to. But obviously here, it doesn't seem like that's the case. They seem to be always present, and that's just part of the style of it. Obviously, it's the eye of the beholder. You may not be too into it, but I personally don't mind too much. And honestly, I think it's important in terms of, it being a 3D animated thing. It's important to have eyebrows to be visible in order to convey expression more clearly, because it's not as easy to do that in 3D as it is in 2D. You can do a lot of cheating in 2D, while in 3D it's really hard to do that. You can still cheat in 3D, it's just harder to do that and still make it look convincing and not distracting and all that. I just see it as kind of an essential thing that these models kind of have to have. Another major change in the design elements of these character designs compared to what we had before is the Fetlocks. I think that's what they're called. I know my terminology just sucks mostly overall, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. Maybe. It should be. But yeah, Fetlocks. Basically, you can see the actual hooves instead of them just kind of being the same color as the coat color and kind of being hidden away or just completely omitted entirely in the previous style. We can actually see them, and I think they are fine, because I think, you know, it's kind of to be expected. If it's a horse or a pony, they would have something like this anyway. So it doesn't seem like it's, like, not fitting the style or anything, especially since the style is completely different from Friendship's Magic in the first place. I think there's room for, you know, changes like this. It looks fine to me. And I also really like the touch of the fur wrapping around the Fetlocks like this. It looks really, really nice. I keep going back to the fur and the hair and all that. I don't want to get too hung up on that. I can go and talk about that all day. Anyway. And I also want to admire these new ears. These ears look really cool, honestly. We can take a closer look at them with the guards. The guards have a very clearly show what they look like. They're kind of similar to a Gen 4 movie style. Perhaps a little bit more flat, but it's still like the same kind of shape going on, same kind of silhouette and detailing. My models try to go for the movie style as well, but there's a lot less flat looking. They have a lot more, you know, depth to it. It's not a flat ear, but yeah. In general, I think they are really nice looking, and I think they are going to be really helpful for the expression of these characters as well. I think they look really nice. And you probably noticed that the color shifts when you start looking at the inner ear. I believe that's probably due to the hair thinning out there, and you probably see a bit of the bare skin a little bit. I think, maybe. Either that, or it's an actual color shift in the coat color, maybe, but I would imagine it's the actual skin showing a little bit, which is fine, because, you know, it's not like hair growing inside the inner ears, you know, all that normal looking, right? And also the ears are a pretty good showcase of the subsurface scattering that is present, which isn't surprising. It's a CG film released in the modern day. Subsurface scattering is a pretty essential shader to have on your models in order to make them look real, and in order to make them look full of life. It's very essential. And if you don't know what subsurface scattering is, it's essentially light passing through your skin like this. Light doesn't just bounce off your skin, it goes through it as well and scatters within your skin and muscles and all that kind of stuff. It's also why light shine through your finger has a red tone to it. It's because, you know, you have blood. So, blood being red, you have red shining through. Anyway, we can see that aspect shown here as well, and it's very important, like I said. If there's no subsurface scattering, they look a lot more plastic-like than you would expect. However, that might be covered up a little bit with the fur, because, you know, fur kind of blocks quite a bit of what the skin looks like. But with the ears, they are very, very thin, very thin skin, so that means light passes through a lot easier, and there's less hair, so it makes subsurface scattering the most prominent in that area, and I think it looks nice. You can see the subsurface scattering right around here, as well as the top of this inner side of the ear as well. You can see subsurface scattering. That's clearly light passing through the skin. I also suppose there is another aspect some people might be raising eyebrows for, is the fact that ponies have lips. Personally, I think that's fine, especially given that these characters are very anthropomorphic anyway. By that I mean they have human-like faces. Even Friendship is Magic was like this. Obviously, far more cartoon proportions, but it's not like Friendship is Magic had actual horse-like faces, right? They are far more closer to a human face than a horse face, clearly. And also when it comes to 3D animation, I think having lips that can pucker out like that is important for lip syncing. When we talk, there are syllables and stuff that are phonemes that require our lips to pucker a little bit when we speak, pretty much. And while in 2D animation you can kind of get away with not having that kind of pucker going on, even though Friendship is Magic had plenty of that anyway. It's just not as obvious, but I think it's important to have the mono pucker because of how essential it is to convey speech through the lip syncing. If the models couldn't pucker, then the lip syncing would just look off in some moments where you would expect lips to pucker for certain phonemes. So I can perhaps understand why some people might find this a little weird looking. I personally don't really think that's the case because we've already crossed the line of it being a horse face anyway. It's more human-like than anything. And every everything in Friendship's Magic was like this too, just with a more cartoony style. So, anyway, yeah, that's my take on that. As for the actual pose of Izzy here, with her lips being like this, I think it's a great use of the lips to show her expression of her, like, with her slightly oblivious curiosity of what's on her horn. As you can tell, there's a tennis ball on her horn, in case you just didn't notice somehow. But yeah, it's a great way to express her in that way. And now as for the character designs as a whole, at least from what we've seen so far in this image, I'll show more characters later, but from this image, I really like the character designs. Obviously, I've already said that Izzy is my favorite. I really like Sunny as well. However, her first impression in this first screenshot, it was a little rough. Not necessarily because of the face thing I talked about earlier, but also because her mane was mostly just hidden away behind her, so it just looked a little off because we couldn't see her entire mane. But now that we see it with this, it looks far better, in my opinion. And then we also have the guards here. To be honest, I don't even know if these guards are male or female. The way we were able to tell the difference in FIM might not really translate over to this, but yeah, regardless of that, though, I think they look fine. The designs are good. I imagine, I know there's a lot of bronies out there that kind of criticize the MLP guards for not being great at their job. I've already seen criticism of the guards not scowling, which is apparently an important thing. Maybe. I don't know anything about that, honestly, but I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, as we can tell with these main characters in the middle here, and also with the other characters we'll be looking at later, the color palette is quite a bit different from Friendship's Magic. Friendship's Magic had lots of primary colors within their main cast, but based on what we've seen so far, there's going to be a lot of secondary, tertiary colors in the actual color scheme of the main cast. And I honestly like that take. It's a nice way to differentiate between Friendship's Magic, full of primary colors for the main cast, compared to what we have here, which is definitely not full of primary colors. Lots of less obvious, less, I guess, well-known primary colors, right? Some people might critique it for that, honestly. But, I don't know, I think it's fine. It's a good way to differentiate it, and I think the colors still work for what they are. I will admit, though, that we will see this later, but there is a lot of purple so far. There's a lot of purple. We already see two purples here. The purplish pinkish coat here, and then the purple pink mane here. You know, it's lots of purple, and there's going to be more purple later. And we also have more details to the characters as well that aren't just related to the colors. In Friendship's Magic, accessories were quite rare for characters to have as a permanent feature. I think Applejack is like the only one that had a hat as like a permanent accessory to her character design. But all the other characters were just, you know, they were quite plain in terms of what they were wearing and what other kinds of detailings they had. Obviously, I suppose the most like detailed would be like Rainbow Dash having the full color rainbow on her mane. But that's not necessarily an accessory. But a lot of characters that we've seen so far have a lot of like what I would call micro details that makes them a lot more unique in a smaller way. So obviously we have the braided hair and the bands keeping them together in Sunny's mane, which I suppose Applejack also had that too, by the way. Applejack had bands keeping her mane from, you know, flowing and keeping them together, which makes sense for the character, you know, being a workhorse and all. Don't want the mane to get in the way of the work. But we see more obvious examples of very unique micro details of the character design with Izzy. We have two examples of this. We have her little wristband here, which has been very prominent in her character design that we've seen. It's always been there. As for if it's significant for anything, it could be the case, plot-wise, maybe. I'm not going to speculate too much. There's not much known to it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's significant to the plot. But yeah, it looks nice on her. Obviously, there's questions of whether or not that thing would even stay on her, because she doesn't really have much of a hand to keep the wrist from the wristband from like falling through, because the hoof bottom is like not really that much wider than like the wrist area of the hoof. It is a little bit, I suppose, but it looks like a fairly loose-fitting bracelet, so, you know, realistically speaking, I guess it would probably just fall right off, but, you know, details. And the other example for Izzy of, like, something being fairly unique to her, I would imagine, is her horn. I'm not speaking about the tennis ball. I think that's more so related to this scene that this screenshot was taken in. There's some sort of context we're missing, why there's a horn on her head. I can provide plenty of guesses as to why that would be the case. I will refrain from doing that, though. I would prefer not to provide too many spoilery aspects in this video. Just want to comment on character design. And with that in mind, the horn itself is quite unique in the fact that it's not what you normally expect from a unicorn horn. Her horn is not the same color as her coat. And it's hard to tell in this screenshot, but in the like merchandise art, there's like patterns, like artistic swirling patterns on her horn as well. I don't know what the deal is with that in the merchandise. It doesn't seem too visible in the screenshot, so maybe that doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. But the main thing is her horn is fairly unique, and I would imagine most other unicorns we're probably going to be ending up seeing in this new franchise, this new soft reboot, are still going to have horns that match their main coat color. Of course, I'm speculating. She's the only unicorn we've seen so far, so I could be wrong. But I'll explain why I think this later, once we take a look at one of the other characters that's been leaked. And yes, I will be showing that character. I don't consider too much of a spoiler, unless you would consider like all the character designs being spoilers. But I will refrain from talking about anything related to the plot. I will just talk about like the character designs and how they apply to just them and how they don't apply to others and all that kind of stuff. At least based on what I think and based on what I assume and all that. Of course, anything can change. We don't know everything yet, but yeah. Anyway, I think the last thing I want to talk about with this is the posing work. Honestly, there's not too much to say, especially with the guards. The guards are fairly simply posed. Obviously, there's some things I can say that's probably related to the context of why they're posed the way they are, perhaps. But, you know, that could get into spoiler territory, so I will refrain from going that route. I want to talk about the main, like, body poses, however. I will refrain from talking about the faces, how they're posed for the rest of the characters, but, yeah. Body pose. So, I think I'm going to be seeing a fairly common theme with how these character models are going to be posed. If we take a look at the front hooves of most of these characters, you can see that most of them are crossing their front legs. You are probably not doing that a whole lot, but you are definitely doing that, and you are definitely doing that. And that's probably going to be fairly common. And that's mainly because it's far more appealing to have the legs converge together when you have them standing like this, rather than spread out, especially when it's supposed to be a relaxed pose. But yeah, there's not much else to say other than that. It's just an observation. It's obviously something that we didn't see like a whole lot of in Friendship's Magic, because usually the default poses were just straight down, usually, or slightly like the hooves were like curved a little bit in front of them, a little bit, I suppose, in any sort of default standing pose. The most interesting pose here to talk about is Sunny here that's sitting. Having a pony sit in 3D in this style is very tricky, and I know that from experience. So in Friendship is Magic, whenever a character sat like this, their hooves usually, I'm talking about the front hooves. Their front hooves were usually fairly straight down. They didn't curve out and in front like we see here, and that's mainly because they were able to cheat the proportions. In 3D, usually you can't get away with doing that too much, and obviously in this case they aren't doing that pretty much at all. I'm pretty sure the proportions for Sunny aren't changed at all. The main reason I think her front legs are so far in front of her is because of her proportions and how the proportions of ponies are in general. That even applies to Friendship's Magic, because this is a problem I encountered myself. With long legs like that, you can't have it pointing straight down, because it's going to lift your chest up far too much, and then the sit pose is just going to be essentially her back would just be straight vertical, and her legs would be like this, and it would look very unnatural unless you did some adjustments to the proportions just for that kind of pose. Not permanent adjustments, just like shrinking the arms a little bit and maybe like increasing the length of the spine temporarily when the pony sits down. It would probably be a decent option to take. In fact, that is exactly what I do for something like this. For this shot, I had to increase the length of the body quite a bit and shrink the length of the arms in order to get this pose to be straight down like this for the front legs. And even then, I struggled to get this to work. As you can see, Pinkie Pie's shoulders are very, very pronounced and pushed up because there's just not enough room for the legs to be straight without pushing the shoulders up. Like, I could have shrank the arms more, but I felt like that would have been too obvious if I pushed it that far. So, yeah, I could see exactly why they would decide just to pose it like this for any sort of sit pose. And also, it doesn't even look that bad in this case. There's also the point of the hind legs being somewhat of a struggle to pose as well. To be honest, it's more so a rigging challenge than anything. It's something I've struggled with. Having the hind legs be able to bend that far up, like, for a horse hind leg like that, it's just so hard to do without causing other deformation artifacts and problems. It is a challenge, and I have tried many different types of solutions, and I've got a decent workaround right now that uses like corrective blend shapes, but that's kind of hard to automate for, especially when you have to account for all the rotations in every axis. That's anyway, very difficult. Obviously, we don't have a very clear shot at the hind legs here. We just see like a front-facing angle of it, and then we see the hind leg back here. We don't really see how the body and the hind legs really intersect from the inside of it. And perhaps that's intentional. Maybe they're hiding some of it because of deformation problems they might have had too. But, you know, that's just an assumption. I would imagine it's definitely a hurdle they had to overcome when it came to rigging these models to be able to be posed like this. And, yeah, I guess that's it. I guess there's one thing I could also just briefly touch on. It's something I noticed when the screenshot first showed up, is that I'm assuming this could be fixed, but we have an error here where Sunny's tail is hovering above the ground for whatever reason. Not sure if there's a technical limitation with the hair simulation they're using, if that's what they're using at all. I'll talk about that later. Surely there would be some way to force that tail to be more attached to the ground instead of hovering over it. But yeah, so that's it for this screenshot for now. Now I want to talk about the animation. Alright, so what we have here is a very short, like 10-second video of a little preview of some of the characters, one of which we haven't seen yet. I'll be talking about him later, but I want to talk about some of the animation briefly first before we get too much into the character again. But yeah, let's take a quick look. So we have the new character introduction. Yeah, there you go. Very, very brief. And this preview animation was first shown to a bunch of investors, so, you know, keep that in mind. But obviously there was a future preview animation that was released that shows a little bit more animation that we haven't seen that in this, that I'll also show, that was shown to like the general consumer. So, this guy's name is Hitch. He is going to be a main character in the new generation, and he'll be it'll be the first time a pony character that is considered to be a main character is going to be a stallion instead of a mare. So that's exciting. Obviously, this first introduction of this character shows that he's probably pretty smug about himself, which I'm not too sure how I feel about that. Personally, I feel like I'm kind of over that kind of personality trope in any sort of animation made for kids and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm over that, but we'll see. There's, again, it's important to not judge too harshly based on first impressions. There's probably more to it than what meets the eye, right? There's more things we could probably expect from this character other than just this brief introduction, right? You know? But yeah, there was his introduction. He also has a bit of animation right near the end here as well with Sunny. It makes me think they're probably related in some way. Perhaps they're brother or sister, but, you know, I don't think any of that stuff is confirmed. It's just based on what I am seeing here on screen in front of my face. An interesting aspect to note with the new stallion here, I don't know if it's going to be a normal thing with all stallions in this new generation, but it's very clear that the head is quite short, like in this direction, from the back to the front, compared to what we've seen in Gen 4, where Gen 4 stallions had very, very long muzzles. Again, that maybe, you know, other stallions in this universe are still going to have that, but, you know, who knows. It is just a design quirk to note that the head is definitely going to be a lot less lengthy. It's going to be quite short. And also, if we take a look, I forgot to take note of this, but he has a belt-like thing, kinda, what would you call, like, something like this? Anyway, it's another accessory that is unique to him. It's probably a fairly permanent feature for his character design, given that it is in a preview animation. You know, what they're probably going to show here is something that's going to be permanent to their characters, right? Technically an assumption, so we'll see. But we would take note that he has a badge here, and it would make me assume that perhaps, you know, that might be a sheriff badge, or whatever the equivalent of that would be in Equestria in this version of My Little Pony. So yeah, maybe this stallion is actually part of, like, law enforcement, perhaps. Who knows? That would be interesting. We shall see. There's not much else to say other than that. I don't even think there's any leaks out there that discusses what he even does. So, yeah, completely in the dark here. We don't know. Now, animation. Definitely something that I am more familiar with, but to be honest, I usually have a lot more to say if there's something I can critique. And to be honest, there's not much here I can really say in terms of critiques I can give, because a lot of this is pretty well animated. So Hitch's intro, even if I am still iffy on his personality that was portrayed, it is well animated. Very, very nicely animated. And again, it's why I say that it's very, very obvious that the people behind this movie know what they're doing. The people they brought on to do animation being one of them. And this is not going to be your Hello Piggy Pie kind of thing going on. Hello Piggy Pie, honestly, if I wanted to, I could critique that all day, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to be overly negative, right? But this is good. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out something I can say. Like, I'm used to critiquing things that I see faults in terms of animation. Unfortunately, I am not great at trying to find things to say about animation that I think is really, really good, because usually all I would have to say is stuff like, oh yeah, they definitely follow the principles of animation here, right? The principles of animation are clearly being followed, obviously. Like, again, they know what they're doing. It's characterizing this character well, even if, like I said, I don't know if I'm with the characterization aspect yet, but that's not relevant to the animation itself. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I like the weight shifting behind it, right? That's an aspect I really like to focus on with my own animations. It's done very gracefully. I really like how the hind legs are moving when he starts hopping around like that, too. It's done very, very smoothly. Again, I wish I'd do a better job at praising it. And also, there's a really good attention to detail with the ears as well. Pay attention to how the ears move when he does his thing. Lots of expression put behind the ear expression, and you also see that with her as well, but we'll get to her. It's why I really like the idea of how the ears look. They seem very, very flexible, and I like that. I've had issues with my ears not being flexible. They've had issues where they've caused deformation problems in the past before, but I feel like I've probably overcome that at this point. I just need to get better at utilizing them when I can with my own animations. A thing I did notice, though, with the hair animation, that I will talk about a little bit more later as well with another animation that I have yet to show, is with the tail. And it's something that makes me think that the hair, or the mane and the tails, are manually animated in some way, which I guess wouldn't be too surprising, but it does give me some ideas on how I could probably tackle my own hair in Blender, but I gotta do more thinking on that. But anyway, the thing that makes me think that, though, is if we look at the tail near the end of Hitch's animation, look at the tip of the tail. If you can kind of see that the tip of the tail just sort of starts snapping back to its original pose after he's done moving. And it's sort of a way that I wouldn't expect hair to reset to a curve. I feel like that was manually manipulated in some way in order to make that tip curve like that, which is probably part of its design. It's meant to be like that. Again, I don't know to what extent the hair is simulated. In terms of the animation itself. Obviously, the hair particle system is actually real. They are using hair particles, but the main issues that I've run into when using hair is animation. I could probably get hair to work fairly well in a static render, but when it comes to animation, that's where most of my technical problems come in, and it just makes me curious how they did it in this animation. Like, how much of it is driven by simulation, and how much of it is driven by manual posing, But if they did do manual posing, then I'm kind of curious, well, how did they end up doing that? Maybe I should probably look into that. Because trying to rely on fully automated hair physics seems probably not the smartest idea now that I think about it, especially when it comes to pony hairstyles, where they need to keep their shape as well as, respond to physics. Because if you make them too stiff, then they don't respond to physics, but if they aren't stiff enough, then they don't keep their shape, and it's a mess. So I don't know, it's got me thinking. Obviously, most people that have watched this probably haven't even noticed that quirk, but it's something I've been looking out for. It's gotten me thinking. I think that's a good thing. So yeah. Anyway, now let's talk about Izzy over here, the right quarter over here. I really like how she's animated here. There's not a lot to talk about because of how brief it is, and you don't even see her whole body. We just see her face pretty much, and as well as her waving hoof. We're going to go ahead and switch over to YouTube. There's a different version of this animation that shows a little bit more of her body, actually. Might as well use that. Not a whole lot, but might as well. But yeah, a nice thing I did notice with her face and how it's animated for her giggle, a nice little attention to detail that I really like is stuff like this, where right before she starts to laugh, she has like a brief cheek puff, like she's holding it in a giggle right before she starts bursting out laughing. It's kind of hard to notice, I suppose. Let me slow it down, actually. But it is there, and I really like it. It's the attention to detail that I strive for in my animations. Very brief. You can see the cheek puff slowly building up and then releasing in a single frame. Boom. Right there. I like it. And of course, the ears are doing a great job of conveying the emotion as well. And again, I also like the ears are twisting away as well. That's the main thing that I struggled with my rig before I learned how to use twist bones. Those are very important to learn in order to get ears to twist like that properly and not deform weirdly. But yeah, very nice. I really like it. Really like it. And now we have this last part for this animation where Sunny and Hitch are playing a little bit. It makes me think that they're brother or sister, because it seems like that kind of behavior where they're just teasing each other. That's totally a sibling thing. It totally is. The whole childish roughhousing thing, come on. What else could it be? But yeah, there's not too much more for me to say. I will say it is a little weird that they're laughing the way they are. But I'm pretty sure that's mostly because we don't have any voice acting yet. Yeah, we don't have voices. There's no audio here. We just have the visuals. I honestly can't wait to see what these characters sound like. It's going to be a very, very hard way to wait out. This whole thing is going to be hard to wait for, to be honest. You have until September-ish when the film is scheduled to release on Netflix. It's a lot of months from now, so gotta buckle in and just be patient. But yeah, other than that, this animation seems pretty solid, and is also giving more characterization to these two and what their chemistry is like, which again suggests that they're probably siblings. Nothing confirmed saying that, it's just the implications of the behavior here. And it's also a more positive characterization of Hitch right here. Obviously, he was very, very smug at the start, right? Very, very smug. But here, he's a lot more playful and seems to be more like himself, probably, maybe. And you'll see how he turns out in the film. Let's just say that. All right, and now there's one more thing to show. Like I said before, I used this YouTube video to show Izzy a bit more clearly because there's more of her shown. But this also shows Sunny and how she's introduced in an animated form. So you can see her here. Really nicely animated. Really nice. I think this is my favorite animation so far from this. So Sunny gets thrown in, literally, apparently. You can even see by her expression, briefly. It's a bit blurred, but you can see she's, like, completely freaked out. Oh. I actually had to notice this. She's holding onto a rope, it looks like. She has a rope in her mouth. She's literally holding on. But it's... Wow, okay. So that's interesting. I'd never noticed that. But... yeah, she swings in. Never mind. That doesn't get thrown. She swings in. And then you can see her expression as she starts to fall. Slightly uncontrolled, I suppose, at the start. But she quickly regains composure. Very, very quickly. Becomes very confident and also sort of smug, which I suppose kind of makes sense if, like, she's related to Hitch. Having a bit of a common character traits going on there, probably, maybe. Obviously, it's a bit more restrained here. It's more so a confident grin than it is just a smug grin. And I also really like the attention to detail with the micro expression. Right before she does her grin, her eyelids and eyebrows, like, move down a little bit to sort of reset her face to a different pose. It's a good use of a micro expression. Mouth openings briefly right as she does that grin as well. Lots of attention to detail. I like it. They know what they're doing. Also, back on that hair and tail thing, we can see very clearly with Sunny's animation that the hair settles extremely quickly after she is finished with her pose there. Like you can see her mane is starting to like overshoot and follow through and all that, but then it just stops. It just stops just like that. I can't snap. Anyway, and it's not just her mane. Her tail does this as well. It just stops completely, which isn't natural for hair to do if it was simulated. Which is again, why I think perhaps a lot of the hair animation is actually done manually. Maybe. I would like to know. I could see why they would want to do that for the reasons I've described before. Trying to rely on hair simulation for hairstyles like this is probably not ideal. It will create a lot of problems trying to keep the shape of it while also letting the hair, like, move and react properly to motion. That's the problem I've ran into plenty of times, and this seems like manually animated to me. That's the impression that I have based on what I'm seeing in these preview animations. Because if it was automated, it wouldn't just stop like that unless they like paused the or stopped baking the physics or something. That's also possible as well. They perhaps didn't bake the entire time frame for the hair for that simulation. So perhaps it was just an incomplete animation, maybe. But we'll I don't know. We'll see. This is the only animation that we have so far. So I would like to see how the hair animates in motion in the actual film first before I make any full conclusions there. Even then, I probably can't conclude it exactly because I don't know how these characters are rigged. But yeah, I also really like how she resets herself in her body animation. Just slight readjustment to all of her legs right after she lands. Gets her pose straightened out. Very confident. It also makes me... I really like how this is making me think, but it's making me think of ideas of how I could better rig my characters as well. Like... if I were to imagine myself trying to animate something like this with my models currently, I can see problems that would come up in my head. That's like, oh, why does my rig not do this? Why is this rig so bad? The main thing that I think my rig would struggle with right now is the shoulders not behaving in a way that's easy to control. I don't know if I can easily describe what I mean, but if we take a look, the legs are posed in a very controlled way, despite the body moving up and down. A common problem that rigs have, if they don't take this into account, sort of like my rig does, which I should probably fix. But anyway, a very common problem is if you have your leg on the ground in a fairly straight state, right, where your elbow or knees are locked in place, right? They're locked. And you're trying to move the body around while trying to keep that arm straight on whatever surface it's on. A lot of the time, you run into problems where if you move the body slightly too forward, all of a sudden, your joint's just going to buckle very, very abruptly. Or, if you move it too far away, the arm just starts to disconnect from the ground. It's like levitating. Which you could probably eliminate if you'd have bone stretching enabled, but if you don't, that's another problem that would become quite clear. So a solution to this that I have in mind is like adding an IK controller to the shoulder, because currently the shoulder that I have in my rig doesn't have IK. It has to be manually posed. And the way I correct for this manually is by manually posing the shoulder. So the problem with that is that I have to do like constant keys, like every single frame to fix it, because I can't just add keyframes here and then go like 10 frames later, add keyframes here and expect it to work because of how abrupt the buckling of the joint is. Like if you're slightly off with the shoulder and you move the shoulder slightly too close, the elbow is just going to start moving and buckling very, very quickly. That's just how the geometry of it works. So just about every frame I have to key the shoulder to re-straighten out the arm, and it's very tedious. And honestly, I get lazy sometimes, but it's not smart because it would save me time in the end if I had just add an IK to the shoulder in the first place. So yeah. Anyway, brief technical rant over. It's good that I have these thoughts though. It's helping me think and give me ideas of what I could do to fix problems with my own models, which again clearly shows again that these guys know what they're doing. To be honest, sometimes I don't. A lot of people tend to overestimate my skill level. I would like to reiterate, I've talked about this before, that I am pretty much entirely self-taught. There's a lot that I don't know because of a lot of things I might have just missed with research on my own terms and all that. I have not been taught by anyone. I don't have a great workflow because of that as well. So, like, there's a lot of problems that I have due to this aspect that a lot of people probably don't even realize. Probably perhaps because it's not all that visible in like my final products of animations, but I still kind of see it in the final animations. But yeah, anyway, I guess I just have the eye for that kind of stuff. But anyways, I think that's it for this animation. So there's one more thing I still want to talk about though. It is related to the leak that happened a couple days ago that was not officially revealed yet. In fact, this character that I'm about to show you just isn't in any sort of official merchandise that's been officially revealed so far. It was leaked as merchandise, but not officially revealed. So technically, I guess she's a spoiler at this point, but I won't be discussing anything too plot related to her. I have some speculation, obviously, and some things I might know, but I will leave that up to you guys to do research on that. I just want to talk about the character design and how they look. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Change tabs. Oh my god! Whew. Anyway, these are bed sheets. So this is merchandise art that leaked, and we have two characters here that we do already know. We have Sunny and we have Izzy, but there's a new character here. Always keep in mind though, this is merchandise art, and the stylization on merchandise has always been very inconsistent. It's obviously the the faces here are very strange looking, far worse than anything we've seen from the CG stuff. It is very bizarre, and I don't like it. In terms of the art style, I do not like this. But we do get to take a look at the character we haven't seen yet, and based on the leaked information, technically unconfirmed for this, but I'm pretty sure this character design is pretty much set in stone at this point. But the name I'm not too sure about, but so far, based on the track record of the leaks, it would probably be true that her name, part of it at least, is Pip. P-I-P-P. So yeah, 2 P's. And she probably has more to her name than that. It's just part of her name. Just like Izzy isn't her full name. It's Izzy Moonbow, and then, Sunny Star Scout. I don't remember Hitch's last name. I think that was revealed at some point, but I don't remember what that is right now. Maybe I'll have it on screen somewhere. I probably already did that when I first talked about Hitch anyway, but here it is again. But anyway, I'm going to say anyway a lot, but okay, anyway. So yeah, this character, we can see from this pillow, you can see her entire body. She is a Pegasus. And not only that, her wings are a fairly unique color. If we take a look back at this render, we can see these guards are also Pegasus, or Pegasi. We can see a little bit of the wing on this side over here, and then quite a bit of the wing over here. The wings on these characters match their coat color pretty much exactly, but not hers. It's another one of those things that makes me think, okay, this is probably unique to her. This is like not a universal thing for Pegasi. They should probably still have their wings match their coat color. It's just that the wings are unique to her, and I think I like that. If we take a look at her design, try not to mind the art style too much. This is clearly very rough looking. It's merchandise. Don't pay attention too much to the art style. Pay attention to the character design, because the character design is probably set in stone here, not the art style. Art style and character design is not the same thing. But if you take a look at the character design, you can see that she has like a little headband thing over here as well. And that combined with like very white wings makes me think it's sort of like a design that's made to make her more angelic looking, like an angel. And I kind of like that idea. It would be interesting to find out why she looks like this, perhaps, but I do like the idea of it. I just wonder how they're going to explain that. I have some ideas based on potential leaks again, but I will not get into details. You know, if you want to look into that kind of stuff, you can do that in your own terms. This bedsheet, though, in general, while most of it is pretty bad looking, it has revealed a character that has not been officially announced yet, which is very neat. Though, do note that I said most of the bedsheet. I really want to make sure people aren't missing this aspect of the bedsheet, but look at what we have here in the center. Let's take a closer look. If we look here, we can see Pip in a different art style. And this art style, in my opinion, is quite excellent. Clearly, without a doubt in my mind, that this right here, this Pip, is done by a completely different artist to what did these illustrations here. Very different. And I would suspect, I don't know this for sure, maybe one day we can get confirmation on this, but I am pretty sure that this art, this illustration work here, you can clearly see with this character. It's hard to tell with Izzy, because, again, her colors are kind of just solid color for whatever reason. Again, merchandise art just being inconsistent there. But The actual line work and stuff with Izzy is quite clear here, and the art style reminds me of a fan artist that was brought on board to this movie to help design the characters. I think this illustration here is from her, and she goes by the name of Imalu online. She is one of the best artists in the fandom, hands down. One of my favorites. And I feel like I recognize this style, and it has to be her. If the TV show ends up looking like this, I don't know. I don't think it's really fully confirmed whether or not the TV show that will come after the movie is going to be 2D animated or 3D animated or whatever. It's been said it will be computer animated, but being computer animated doesn't mean it's CG or 3D. Friendship is Magic is computer animated because it was animated in Flash. It's a computer program, hence computer animated. So anyway, we don't know if it's going to be 2D or 3D yet, based on what I know. So if the TV show looks like this, I would be so perfectly okay with that. This looks amazing. I love this line work. Obviously the solid color work is not great because, merchandise art, inconsistent, but the line work is great. I love this. Obviously it might be simplified for the 2D rigs and all that kind of stuff, but if it looks like this in general, I would be A-okay. It would look great. And in fact, we have an upscaled version of this. The original resolution of this was quite low. Obviously, if I zoom in, you can tell it's quite pixelated, but someone used an AI upscaler to bring in more of the detail to be more obvious, and then honestly, the AI upscaler did a pretty good job here. It clearly shows what the line work is meant to convey, for the most part, at least. But yeah, Pip looks really nice, especially blown up like this with, perfectly clear line work here. And and while I have said that Izzy is my favorite character officially revealed so far, I think I like Pip a bit more in terms of the character design. I really, really like the idea of her wings being a different color than her coat, especially for the idea of her wings being like an angelic feature for her character. The concept of that alone has me kind of sold on this character design. Whether or not that's going to be like the case or not, I don't know. We will see what the reasoning of that is once we either see the film or maybe it will get released in like trailers or whatever, but has me curious. I like the idea behind it, and I just like the aesthetics of her design as well. And also, I like the idea that she has a cutie mark with a music note on it. It gets me thinking about what kind of music might happen in this new generation. As we all know, at least if you've seen Friendship is Magic had a lot of pretty good songs, a lot better than a lot of people probably expect from a show like that. It makes me think, man, I wonder if the songs are going to be as good. Like, hopefully, if not, maybe at least slightly worse, but still good, I'm saying, I'm very nervous about the songs as well. Like, I hope they're good. I get very excited whenever I hear a Daniel Ingram song from Friendship is Magic. I just hope that this new generation can live up to that legacy. At least most of the way. So, a main character that might potentially sing. Might be part of her talent set. That sounds pretty interesting. As for what type of music, for her at least, is unclear. Some people have brought up opera, perhaps, which probably be too surprising, though it's also honestly not really my kind of thing. Opera's not really something I'm interested in. But if that's the case, let's see how it works out. I still like the idea behind this character, though. But yeah, that's it. Finally, discussed everything I wanted to discuss about. I really, really, really look forward to this. Like I said before, it is, I think, a fair thing to try to give this new style a chance. I know it is a very, very different style compared to the previous generation, obviously. But I really, really would encourage people to give this a fair chance. What would have happened if you didn't give Friendship is Magic a fair chance? I know what would have happened with me. I would have just skipped out on it entirely and missed out on something that honestly kind of changed my life, in terms of what I'm passionate about, and also how I've gotten much better as a 3D animator, making 3D animations and also 3D models, I suppose, of these pony characters. It's been quite a journey for me, and I don't want to miss out on anything that might be potentially good just because it just looks different, and I also don't want to see other people doing the same thing. So that's an important note to end off on, I think. So with that, thank you guys for watching. It's been a very interesting little discussion. I really do look forward to this. I will see you guys later.